Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and good morning and good evening to wherever you are based on your time zone. So welcome to today's webinar, and we are talking about decarbonizing transport, no silver bullet. So this is an 1-hour webinar, and my name is Beatrice. I'm the Senior Officer of the Sustainable Mobility Team at Eclipse World Secretariat. So nice to meet all of you here. Before we start, we would like to go through some of the technical issues first. You can see during the webinar, if you have any questions, you can put your questions at the question pen in your box wherever you can see it. It's on your right. And if you want to have any questions to be spoken directly to the speakers, we can have that during the Q&A session. You just have to put your hands up. Just have to put the hands up icon, and then we will have you to speak directly to the speakers to pose a question. And if you would like to chat, you can also do that in the chat box for any technical issues that you may have. Okay, so I'm just gonna introduce today's agenda. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction of why are we talking about transport decarbonizing. And then Oliver La will start to give you an overview of transport decarbonizing strategies around the, that's ongoing right now. And Mark will be giving you a city perspective from the Barcelona metropolitan government on how the mobility has changed because of COVID. And Zure will be speaking about decarbonizing in East Asian cities, giving you the East Asian perspective. After that, we will have a Q&A session and a panel discussion. So yeah, feel free to ask your questions anytime, and then we will conclude by a closing remark. So I'm just going to briefly introduce the panelists. So today we have Oliver La. He is the Head of Research Unit Mobility and International Cooperation from the Wuppertal Institute. He also heads the UMI initiative, which is the Urban Electric Mobility Initiative. We also have Mark, who is the Head of Sustainable Mobility Section in the Barcelona Metropolitan Government. He has more than 10 years of experience in this subject. We also have Zure. He is the assistant professor that's based in National Cheng Kung University in Taiwan. And of course, myself as the moderator. Okay, so why are we talking about decarbonizing transport and why the urgency? So you can see that carbon transport-related GHG emissions is right now about 23%, and out of which freight contributes about 40%. And it is set to increase, it has been increasing since the year 2000 by about 30%, and it is set to increase to 60% by 2050 if we do not do anything. And the long-term goal for Paris Agreement is to limit global average temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we can see that transport sector is a key issue when we talk about decarbonizing and also talk about global climate goals. And now that we are already in 2020, we only have 30 years left. And are cities doing enough? Are governments doing enough to stop or reverse the trend that we see right now in the transport sector? Okay. And right now, what we can see is that our transport sector is still mainly powered by non-renewable energy, is about 97% of it, and only 0.3% out of the renewable energy percentage is from renewable electricity. So we can see that there's still a huge gap that we still need to achieve in order to decarbonize transport by 2050. And transport is also not just about GHG emissions. Transport is something that transcends to every part of our life. We also talk about road safety, air quality, and also many other factors as well. And dealing with climate goals, we also talk about the sustainable development goals, and this also comes hand in hand when we talk about transport. And so when we look at cities around the world, we can see that there are many cities that have started to electrify their transport, and they have also had many climate goals. But is this enough? What do we see right now? Is this enough for us to achieve the carbon neutral mobility by 2050? So this is something that we would like to discuss today, looking at our current development trajectory, as well as what are the future things that we need to do, what are the decarbonizing pathway to achieve equal access as well as a carbon neutral mobility. So this is something that we'll be talking about today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Oliver, to present. And yeah.
Thank you very much. Great. You can see and hear me, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. It's a wonderful opportunity to talk and to have a discussion about this. And well, maybe going back as Beatrice introduced us, I'm also based at the Wuppertal Institute, but I'm also running for our friends at UN Habitat, the Urban Electric Mobility Initiative. And of course, with regard to the topic of our session, one could say, well, is there no silver bullet? People are talking about electrification of transportation. So is that the silver bullet that we're talking about? Not quite. So certainly it is a contribution to the wider picture, but just transcending from one old technology to something that at least somewhat feels newer and more efficient and cleaner is not going to cut it. So a 2.5 ton diesel fueled vehicle and a 2.5 ton electric vehicle, both of which are still highly inefficient and unsustainable. So while it is bringing us a little bit forward, there needs to be more to it. Then, of course, sharing this kind of vehicle would already be a great step forward. But even more before we start getting into sharing systems, into new mobility services, we would like to think first, what kind of vehicle do we actually need? So before we start electrifying and before we start digitalizing, we want to think first of what kind of vehicle do we actually need to get from A to B? Do we need a 2.5 ton vehicle to get a 70 kilo person from A to B? Maybe not. If we then start moving beyond bringing that all together, thinking first digitalization, electrification, integration of services, then we're really on to a transformative kind of change. And this brings us back to the good old pillars that we have talked about a bazillion times, and I don't want to waste any more time, just to mention that again very briefly. We need to avoid transportation through urban design and keeping waste short, and of course shift to more efficient modes, where of course high capacity public transport is the key pillar. And then of course all the remaining things that move around, those ones we need to electrify or make more efficient. And all those puzzles come together in innovative concepts that we are trying, and testing those solutions out can be very helpful trigger for innovative change. And we can and want to do that in urban living labs. And this is where we can test new vehicles, new types of services in the operations, new solutions to connect various services and vehicles. And we want to bring this together in a transformative urban transport policy cycle, where we test solutions, bring them together into the wider planning picture at the city level, but also at the national level, and of course connect the dots between local and national policies. There is quite a division of labor with regard to who is responsible for what in this transformative circle. And of course, we need to use windows of opportunities when we have them at the local or at the national level. But for really transformative change towards decarbonizing transport, so towards a pathway that is actually in line with the Paris Agreement, we need all the measures that are out there at the local and at the national level, and facilitate a coordinated policy approach among local, state, and national level. I only have a few minutes, so I'll have to run through reasonably quickly, but just to get an idea of where we work as the Urban Electric Mobility Initiative, but also as the Solutions Plus partnership, of which there are many in the group as well. It's great to see. We test some individual niche innovations on the electric mobility side of things, then try to combine them at the local level, and then also weave them into the sustainable urban mobility planning at the city level, which of course then needs to feed back at the national level into national urban mobility planning in a very coherent and comprehensive way. This is the approach that we are taking, really trying to connect the dots with individual innovations, trying to package them and bring them into long-term projects. So our pilot projects are really not just aiming to test something and see where this is happening or where this is going, but to be individual blocks in a more transformative process. And this is enabled through a program that is funded by the European Union, which is called Solutions Plus, as I mentioned. We started earlier this year, and we bring together 10 living labs now. Nanjing just joined us through funding from China this week. So we have a round number of 10 now together, and we work with our friends from UN Environment and the IEA in a Global Environment Facility funded program, where altogether we can serve over 50 countries with support on e-mobility transformations, where we focus on vehicles, operation, and integration. I'll finish up soon, and then we can maybe have a discussion later on as well. So there will be business models as well as guidance documents, tools will be shared on all our demonstration projects throughout the program. You are welcome to join us either through the capacity building program that we run, or also through the demonstration activities at the city level, where we bring together local authorities, startups, industry, knowledge partners in those 10 countries. But in the next phase, next year, we will be also opening up to more replication cities as well. With that, I'll stop and hope for a nice discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oliver. So Oliver has brought out a very important point, which is that decarbonization is not just about electrification, but it's also a more holistic way where we also talk about vehicles, operation, as well as integration. And with Wuppertal, they've done it through living labs. And so that is a really good point that we can see. Next, we have a question from one of our audience, Devi, to Oliver. So her question is, even if cities are focusing on developing electric transportation in cities, but the source, which is the power plant to power them, is still based on fossil fuels, what can we do?
Great. Excellent question. This brings up my point from the very first slide that I showed. If you power a 2.5-ton electric SUV, even in a system like Germany, where only still a quarter of electricity comes from coal, but even worse in other places, you're not doing yourselves or the climate a favor. So there, of course, it is important to focus on electric vehicles that are very resource efficient, like electric 2- and 3-wheelers, for example. But of course, at the same time, this is a societal transition. And there, not one sector will be decarbonizing the whole economy. All of them need to, and this is where sectors need to go hand in hand. And an electrified transportation sector, of course, relies on an increasingly renewable energy sector.
Oh, thank you very much, Oliver. So right now we would like to move on to our second presenter from Barcelona Metropolitan Government, Mark. Yeah, I will pass the floor to you, Mark.
Hi, my name is Mark. I work in metropolitan area of Barcelona, and I will explain the agreement for a new mobility. Let me see. Yes, the metropolitan area of Barcelona is a space of 36 municipalities with more than 600 kilometers square and more than 3.2 inhabitants. Is one of the biggest metropolitan areas in the south of Europe, and we have one point that we have a lot of density in this area. Almost 48% of the area is uh, is full of activities. In the metropolitan area of Barcelona, we have competences in many areas. I think that the main things that are more relevant for this webinar is competences in transport and mobility, and also on urban planning. And we work all together, not the mobility planners and the urban planners to work as only as one team. In terms of mobility competences, we have we manage the public transport, metro, underground, and interface. We also manage the taxi. We have competences as well in the mobility, in metropolitan mobility urban plane, also in passenger of tourist passenger transport, that here in Barcelona is a big challenge to move all to the tourist segment. And we also have competences. We manage the promotion of sustainable transport, that it's everything related to active mobility, cycling and walking. And why we are making a new agreement? The main point is that in Barcelona, in metropolitan area of Barcelona, we have always maintained the commitment to the healthy, sustainable, efficiency, equitable mobility model. But with the COVID crisis, we have some new things, like the relationship between air pollution and lethality, and many different aspects of the mobility that had pushed to us to make a new plan for urgent actions. I don't want to speak a lot of the mobility situation, the new and the all mobility. I just only want to say that we have some things like the impact of the e-commerce, the paper of the public transport, that we have a lot of people that don't use the public transport because they don't feel safe, and we have many people who are using the private car. So for us, is a bad situation, and we have to put some actions to change this new scenario. Which are the main topics of this new agreement? We have 4 topics. The first one is a new agreement for a metropolis with more bikes and pedestrians. It's seven actions for make it real in a short time. The second topic is agreement for the recovery of public transport. We lost more than the half of the demand, and we have to make a lot of actions to recover the the use of the public transport, and to make the people safe using the public transport. We have two more topics. The third one is the agreement for a new mobility in the that we have many small changes in with agreement with the companies and social agents to reinforce the work at house and to use better the public transport. And the last topic is agreement to preserve the clean and healthy air. And the main action here is the low emission zone that 1 month ago we started the several restriction of our low emission zone. So I will go quickly to show some actions that we are doing. As many big cities or big metropolitan areas, we are working to put in the streets more than 70 new kilometers of tactical cycle paths to connect all the metropolis. You can see in the at the left of your screens our map of highway cycle paths, and we are using this situation to grow this new way to move by bikes. Here there are several renders of these projects. At the end of the presentation, I will show you the not renders, the real pictures. Okay. In terms of bike and pedestrians, we also have many projects to extend, to give more space for the pedestrians in the cities, and also to connect the one city to another city. We are implementing in the way to implement to put in all the cities a limitation of speed in all the urban areas in our metropolis. We have some plans to promote new ways of bike sharing services, and also different programs for improve the business of bikes. I mean, cyclologistics, rent a bike, etc. In terms of the second topic is the agreement for the recovery of public transport. This is our main action, is put new lanes for bus or for big occupancy of vehicles. You can see in the pictures that which are our projects, and in the map on the left you can see all the highways or all the big ways to access to the main area of Barcelona. We are planning lanes, specific lanes for buses, and is change a lane for cars and put it for buses. Maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, all the techniques all the people say that we can't do that because that will collapse the system, and the agenda was always for in terms of time, of congestion. Nowadays, I mean, the congestion is important, but the main point of our agenda is not congestion, is clean air, is change, fight against climate change. So we can do actions like that convert space from private cars to public transport. This is another map with urban tactical bus lanes. We are working to put more than 35 new kilometers in the metropolitan area. It's the same way, just convert space from cars to buses. We are also extending quickly extension of park and rides. It's a place where you can park and also you can only you can park if you use the public transport. And we are also making different actions to recover the confidence of the citizens on public transport. In the next topic is about the new mobility and how to change the way that we move for decrease the morning peak hour. We are making some agreements with companies and social alliances for adapt the working conditions to a new situation, and our main point is try to down the demand of the peak hour, because we have a lot of demand in the peak hour, and we have a lot of offer in public transport in all the day, and if we can manage that, we can have more people using the public transport in the sanitary conditions. The next core topic is the low emission zones. The low emission zones in Barcelona is the biggest low emission zones in the south of Europe, and we are 1 month ago we started the real implementation, and we ban all vehicles in a big area, more than 19 kilometers square. And our plan in the future is to use the low emission zone as a way to fight against climate change. So we are nowadays we are planning our future in 2030 and in 10 and in 20 years to work together to ban all the vehicles and just have a long-term scenario that we only will allow to enter the electric cars.
Sorry, Mark, you have 1 more minute.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, I have 1 more minute, and I will spend the last minute in explain, show the real actions that I told to all of you. When I talk about the lanes for buses, this is a real example in your right. This is also an example of the picture that you see in the bottom, and in the top you can see that we are really working in that. This is also a tactical action for increased space for the bus. This is a new bus and bike lane, and you can see some in yellow, some paint for pedestrians. Here is a new bike lane. Here is a new bike lane. Another one. This is more space for pedestrians. All these actions we approved it in June, and we made it during the summer. So we had a lot of work this summer. This is how to take space from cars to the pedestrian in the city center of Barcelona. And that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So Mark's in Barcelona's, I think their strategy is that they put health as a main narrative and a focus. And it is not just about air pollution, improving air quality, but it's also like how do you improve health of the citizen in amidst of this COVID situation. So I can have
Yeah.
one quick question for Mark is that just now you have also mentioned that with COVID you can see that there's less people taking the public transport. In fact, you lost half of it. So do you think this COVID situation is an accelerator of decarbonizing because some people may switch to other modes of transport, or do you think it is actually slowing down your initiatives in decarbonizing and improving clean air?
When we had the crisis, and I think I have a map here. When we had the big crisis, no mobility, there is no contamination. But we had to make this metropolitan agreement because the situation after COVID is worse than previous COVID. It's more people using private car, more people. Yeah, maybe we have less mobility. That it's nice, it's cool, and we have more people walking and going by bike. But the situation right now is not good for the decarbonization or for fight against air pollution because we have a lot of new people going by car. So we have to act, and we think that the crisis is a good opportunity to make actions. Okay, it's an opportunity to make actions. A lot of actions that I mentioned to you in a normal situation, it's difficult to implement. But now with COVID crisis, it's a big opportunity to make changes.
Great to know that. Thanks, Mark. So right now we will have another speaker. So he's Zuray. He's the assistant professor in National Cheng Kung Universities. He will be sharing on decarbonizing in East Asian cities. Yeah, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Good. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Beatrice, and thank you for the invitation from ICLEI. And I think as a former ICLEI employee, it's actually a good sign to be invited back for events. And that also shows that I'm now the only one who thought I had a good time with ICLEI and at ICLEI. So now I'm based in this part of the world. I think I do have some observations and also some sort of the reflection on the convergence of a theory and what's really happening on the ground to share with others. And I think Mark actually has touched upon the issues about COVID-19 in Spain. So I won't be sort of touching too much around that because agencies now are moving, part of the agencies are moving towards having a regular life and having things back to the right track and the regular track and look forward to moving the urban mobility more sustainable and equitable. So in the next 10 minutes, I would like to share a few thoughts about, because we are talking about silver bullets. If there was a silver bullet, what would the silver bullet be for? And that would be my question. And so in East Asia, if I may use Taiwan example, like cities in Taiwan, which is quite a confined and constrained region. However, it's a perfect sort of setting and size and dimension for different testings and different pilot schemes and different like trials and errors. So what we have been encountering in this part of the world, in this region, is that we are still trying to increase the uptake of e-mobility. However, while we are full steam ahead, we also see some stagnant in the uptake of e-mobility. And would there be any nexus between e-mobility and other industries, since we know already, and Beatrice very nicely captured at the very beginning of the presentation, that transport is one of the biggest sources of emission along with other industries. And shared mobility, what's the future for this, and who should use the shared mobility and who should design the shared mobility? And that has been, all of them have been quite widely discussed on the ground and in Taiwan as well. So e-mobility uptake, if I may use e-scooters, the electric two-wheelers, or as they are called in Taiwan, the two-wheeler, but the e-scooters in Taiwan, there was a kind of a frenzy kind of uptake back in 2018 and 2019 that the leading manufacturer, Gogoro, actually sold about 150,000 e-scooters in 1 year and accounted for 16% of market share in the same year. However, can be because of the coronavirus and can be because of the shift of the market and the competition in the market. Gogoro actually has sold much less sort of E2-wheelers compared to the same period of time last year, and only accounted for only half of the market share as they had last year. And there was quite an issue, a sort of a problem around that, and widely discussed by the mainstream media, the government, and the public. So the reason might be that I know in many of the countries, especially the emerging markets like Taiwan and Southeast Asian countries, and as well, and the governments have tried so hard to put in subsidies to increase the uptake of e-mobility. However, as we see right now in Taiwan, is that the subsidies for e-scooters are ending this year, and people started to wonder whether it's actually more efficient, cost effectively wise, to have an e-scooter which is much higher in terms of the upfront cost and upfront investment than a traditional internal combustion engine scooter. Also, the battery swapping technology is that the future, because battery swapping technology means the scooters have to be confined with a certain type of technology. I think Oliver and Ikelay's projects about the uptake of these scooters in emerging markets show that maybe the standardization has been really challenging across the world. And fair scheme, would that be wise to have a flat rate, just like our mobile phone rate? Or would that be more attractive for users as a pay-as-you-drive scheme? And range anxiety, even though e-scooters sort of companies, manufacturers in Taiwan have tried all the possible resources to establish as many battery swapping stations as possible. Would that be sensible to build as many as battery swapping stations for a particular type of batteries? Would the grids be able to sustain the demand during the peak time? Customer service, that includes the maintenance fee, which is usually higher because it hasn't reached the scale of economy yet. And your mechanics might not have sufficient professional knowledge yet because it's a comparatively new technology. And as the subsidies die down, we show that shows that green purchase doesn't really mean green knowledge. When scooters are becoming too expensive, consumers will still opt for the traditional scooters. So this is the notorious and famous, if I may say, scooter waterfall in Taiwan, and you see thousands, if not tens of thousands, of scooters passing through the main bridges every single morning. Having an e-scooter is not going to change anything because that will be the same waterfall. And this is not a photoshopped picture, which is a PR stunt pulled off by Gogoro a couple of months ago. I just wonder why on earth they would do this PR stunt, since it doesn't really show any solutions to the urban mobility problem. So at the end of the day, this is still the urban mobility problem in many emerging markets, even though some of the e-mobilities in terms of the e-scooters or e-cars are sold and marketed as a way of lifestyle, as a type of consumer electronics, but at the end of the day, it's still a mode of transport. And talking about e-mobility, would that be a possibility for the Nexus? There is a startup in Taiwan based in Taipei trying to bridge different industries together, and in terms of electric vehicles, renewable energies, and air quality. So this ZEV, the Zero Emission Venture City, they developed an EV mobility platform. It's a bit like the ride-hailing or ride-sharing system, but only for the B2B network. And there is one or at least one onboard unit to monitor and record the air quality, and the data would be used for the government to improve their air quality regulations and schemes. And the data will also support the urban planning in terms of the parking management, in terms of the zoning, and the regularly published information will also help raise public awareness. And this is not a new idea, but what's new is that they were trying now to link the use of EV, the energy, the source of EV, with renewable energies in terms of a local solar farm and local wind farm, which is not easy, but they're trying to bring that benefit back to the local community and to form a sort of a local blockchain, and the benefits and the income, the revenue would support people in need in the community and to support the education in sustainable and development and sustainable mobility. I think it's a way to create a positive feedback loop. So the more people understand the importance of air quality, and the more they'll be willing to adopt the renewable energy. Hence, the electric vehicles will use more clean energies than the traditional sort of source of energy. So the last point I would like to share is about shared mobility, and it has been struggling worldwide in terms of the carpooling, in terms of the sort of really kind of a share by people who need to travel at the same time along the same route, like the blah blah car as well. So there are a couple of schemes in Taiwan that have been rolled out in the past few years, and this particular one is called 步步共乘, which is initiated by the national government. Just because if you could see on the left-hand side, this was how people living in villages in rural areas and mountainous areas used to travel, which is completely insane. It's not, of course, it's not legal, and it's just wild, like to transport people with pickup trucks and scooters that's supposed to only have a maximum of 2 passengers. But that's a family car. That's how the way they run school buses, because there's a shortage of public transport provision as well, and also school kids they cannot drive. They are not old enough to drive, and parents might have to run errands. Think about living in the rural areas. The errands might take half a day or even a day to finish because of the distance between locations, let alone older people and people with mobility and cognitive impairments. So last mile connectivity became a really sort of a kind of a key in terms of the urban, suburban, and also rural planning. In some areas, people have to walk 40 minutes to reach to the nearest bus stop. So initiated by the national government, it has become a very successful horizontal integration and vertical integration cases, and to really materialize the multi-level governance. So even though it's in the portfolio of Ministry of Transport and Communication, and it brings the Ministry of Health and Welfare, Education, and Council of Indigenous People together to solve the same question from different perspective, so that they could. 1 minute, Beatrice, is that what you're going to say? Thank you. So to solve their commute and try to solve their, say, hospital runs, school runs, errand runs. So that involves a lot of stakeholder engagement, including informal operators, business premises, and even the big corporates like airlines, telecommunication companies, and to provide an opportunity to showcase their corporate social responsibilities. And the benefits, of course, from the environmental perspective, it's reducing the number of trips, improving the air quality. And from the social perspective, it actually improves the access for all, for people in rural areas, has improved the affordability and the road safety. And then it accidentally, and also not quite accidentally, to match the demand and supply in transport needs, so that there are people doing informal transport, but that's the time to match the demand and supply in a smarter way and in a more sustainable and friendly and community sort of oriented way. I think this is the last slide of my presentation. If you'd like to get in touch, here's my contact. Thank you. Back to you, Bia.
Thanks, Zuri. Okay, so right now I'll just now Zuri has mentioned something which is that the core benefits of decarbonization is not just about cleaner air, but there are also other side benefits as well when we talk about mobility. Right now we would like to enter this Q&A session. I would like all panelists to switch on your camera so that everyone can see you. And while we are waiting for that, I would like to launch a poll so that all participants will be able to also answer. So the first question is that based on current development in the transport sector, do you think that the EU cities can achieve carbon neutral mobility by 2050? Yes or no? And we see that most are still voting. I'll give, that's an interesting answer. So 50% of you have said yes and 50 have said no, so it's just half and half right now. I will show yeah, so that you can also see the poll results. I don't know if you're able to see that. Okay, yeah, so this is the poll result. So 50% of you have said yes and 50 said no. So that's interesting. So we can go back to address some of the questions that we have already have from the audience. So one of them is there are three aspects on a general question about integration. So there are three aspects of decarbonization that seems to be important to change. So the first one is energy sources, land use, and also urban planning. And the third one is to the goals of private auto industry. So these are seems to be a very varying across the scale, and also different goals from these different sectors. So how do we reconcile these different aspects, and how can we do it in a more coordinated way? We can start with maybe Oliver.
Sure. I did have a little glitch in my audio though. If you could repeat the first part of the question.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Don't worry. So the question is about integration. So how do you integrate the goals between energy sources, land use and urban planning,
Right.
as well as the goals from the private auto industry?
Right. Good one. So in particular, the last one, because, well, let me start there, let's say. If your business is to produce something that is in one way or another inherently unsustainable, even if it is an electric car, as we said in the beginning, you do have to rethink your entire business model. We have seen that in the past, with a company like, let's take Nokia, my favorite example in some cases. They used to produce rubber boots. Then they went on to be the world leader in mobile phones. Then they missed an important trend and produce rubber boots again or something like that. I don't know. But obviously, in particular, the European industry, car industry, has been quite slow in realizing that there is a massive need for a change and a massive transition that is already happening that they can't avoid, even if they really tried very hard to do so. They really start to grasp this now and hope they catch up, but still the same approach can't happen. We can't have 2 billion cars on the road in 2050, even if they are electric. So they need to get to the point of becoming a mobility provider, not a car provider. Reconciling that with societal demands on what we need for mobility services is an essential one. And this is where strong leadership and governance is quite important to bring together the key people from key industries, energy, mobility, city leaders, of course, to reconcile societal needs with individual and industry interests. COVID has shown that we can act as a society. Let's do it.
Thank you, Oliver. I guess you have finished because sorry, I couldn't hear for a second, so I didn't know where do you end, if you have ended.
Yeah,
I guess so.
or at
Okay,
least for now.
thank you. Okay, cool. So integration is also about business models and also societal demands. How do you change that? And that is a critical thing. The next question that we have is addressed to Mark from Barcelona. So why is the priority actions why is the priority actions in making public transportation more healthy not addressing why that not addressing how it can be addressed by designing hygienic air circulation in the bus in the metro or even other public transportation? Have you thought about that? Mark, we can't hear you. I think you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, the question was about make the transport public more safe.
Yeah, because of COVID. So by installing some hygienic air circulation or something.
Yeah. We have many specific programs, activities to clean and reclean and to have the bus without COVID. Okay, and we also participate in many European programs for that. But our message is that is only explain the evidences that if you use protection, you can go in public transport, and you can feel safe because there is no transmission in public transport. All the evidences, all the studies that we have told us that the public transport is safe, and we are working day a day to make it safe with new products, with with circulation of the air. So if we use the mask, there is no problem for use public transport. And to ask exactly the question is, yes, we are working in new products, in new strategies to clean the transport, but our main challenge is to say to the citizens that they can use the public transport because it's safe.
Okay, so messaging to the public to gain trust as well. Okay, so now I have one question for all the panelists. You can also interact as well. So in the past, I mean, all of you have been working a lot on transport in different sense, like globally, as well as also like in the cities focus like in Barcelona. So what has changed from the past 10 years with all the decarbonizing strategies? Do you think that based on what you have observed, is there more daring kind of measures that needs to be done in order to achieve the goal by 2050? And how can other developing cities also learn and replicate some of the successes if there is? Anyone can start first. Maybe Zure can start.
That's the million-dollar question. It is challenging. I think I would say maybe many years ago, 10 years ago, people saw transport as transport, like, oh, a bunch of nerds working in like transport. They talked about like transport stats and numbers, and I think gradually people have become more aware of I would say, how related transport is to their everyday life. So transport is not just about moving people from A to B, and transport is also about lifestyle, is about livelihood, and is about and how we move about in a more kind of sustainable, in a safer way. And transport is how I mean, people are getting to pick up on the idea of transport is the way how we can grow up safely, could get on freely, and to grow up without worrying too much about, oh, if I cannot drive, how should I get to the hospital? So I think sustainable transport has become more relevant, but it still needs more stakeholder engagements and still needs more hard working from all parts around the same issue.
Okay, thanks. Picking up on what Zura has said about stakeholder engagement, can you give maybe to the other two panelists more example on how public and private sectors will be able to work together to bridge the goals to reconcile the different needs from public and private sector in order to decarbonize transport? If you have any specific examples, that would be also good.
Yeah, a few. Oh, is that for me?
Yeah, you can also answer
Okay. If it's like addressed to Oliver or Mark, I'm happy to give my minutes to them. But yeah, maybe one example is to like we've seen already like cities worked with the bike sharing or scooter sharing or even ride hailing companies in Germany or even in North America as well to team up to do more complementary urban design for improve the public transport network.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, maybe to Oliver and Mark, if you would like to add comments to that as well.
Sure. I mean,
Yes.
let me just maybe touch on one. Mark, you want to go first? I'm happy to. Okay.
Oliver first, and then Mark
This
can
is
do
the
that.
thing, right? If we're all virtually. So, I mean, one thing in that as an obvious driver for this is that we do have to thank our children for roaming the streets on Fridays and other weekdays and creating a pressure that these old dudes that sit around in this call here and elsewhere did not manage to do for decades. So I think the whole, Fridays for Future movement and how this grew and the political imperative that it generated, that we can't just go on destroying the future of our children, has created a dynamic in the political spectrum in most places, let's say, that is very, very helpful with regard to the narrative that we are creating. It's not just, something that a weird scientist came up with an odd study, or an environmentalist comes up with crazy demands, but it is something that our future depends on this, and our children's future depends on it. So bringing together environmental, social, and economic aspects now is something that is a standard thing that we all agree that those elements belong together. And 10 years ago, this could still be, questions of either we do something for the environment or for the economy. It's not so much that same discussion anymore. It's clear that this is connected.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And now moving on to Mark.
Yeah, I will be very quickly. Is those of us who wanted healthy, safe, and secure and decarbonization our cities. In the past, 10 years ago, we were the immense minority. Now we are the majority. That's so we will do it. It's like it's only time, but I think that the main point is this change in our society.
So things are going better from what we have gathered here. Just that whether it will be fast enough to change the whole thing, not just talking about technology or electrification, but also on behavior change. How do you change from a automobile-based type of mobility to more multi-mobility with public transport, walking or cycling, and also other types of modes. So with this, time is almost up. So I would like to just conclude this session by saying that, so from what we have learned today is like transport decarbonization has to always go hand in hand together with resilience and sustainability goals. And when we talk about decarbonization, while fuel improvements, electrification, they are also important and they are gaining momentum, but it is not enough to fully decarbonize the entire transportation system. And also we need more types of measures to focus on health, probably to focus on resilience, especially in light of COVID. And there's no single path that we can do that, but there's more integrated way. It can be looking at what the society needs, looking at the business models, as what has been suggested as well, looking at multimodality and what can private companies also contribute in the terms of shared mobility. So these are the different ways that we need to look at. And of course, in the theme of daring cities, how it is daring. So what can cities do to be even more daring, and but also more inclusive to the people, and not just focusing on movement, but focusing on mobility and accessibility. I think that is also really important. So with this, I would like to thank all the panelists, all the speakers, and all of you audience who have joined and participated in this session. We will also have another session that's related to decarbonizing transport as well at 4 p.m., which is half an hour later, and is focused on e-buses. And this is organized by BMZ as well as TUMI. So if you would like to join, you could also join the session later as well. Thank you very much to all the speakers and all the audience once again. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very
Thanks a lot.
much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Bia. Thank you, Ecolay colleagues.
Thank you.